Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today, Escaping an OS Takeover, How to Properly Set Up Active Directory and File System Permissions. This is going to be amazing, you guys, featuring our guest speaker, Paula Januszkiewicz. Paula is founder and CEO of Secure and is also an enterprise security MVP and was named by SC Magazine as one of the top women to watch in security. You're also joined by BeyondTrust Bill Tilson, who will run us through a brief overview and demo of BeyondTrust PowerBroker Auditor for Active Directory solution after Paula's portion, so please stick around for that. Mind you, this is a 90-minute session today. My name is Sarah, your webinar host today. Hello, everybody. A kind reminder to please submit your questions via the GoToMeeting console anytime throughout the webinar, and we'll cover your questions at the end during our Q&A time. Also, today's session is being recorded. You'll receive a follow-up email containing links to the recording and the slides shown here today within 1 to 2 business days from now. And the slides can also be immediately downloaded via the handout section in the GoToWebinar console. Additionally, if you are attending for CPE credits and have an ISACA account, you must download the attendance verification document in the handout section now in order to submit proof that you attended today's session. This document will not be available post-webinar, so please download it now if you plan to submit your CPE credits to ISACA. So now that that is all out of the way, I'd like to hand it on over to Paula, who is going to jump right in. And Paula, dive right in, baby. The line's all yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time for attending our webinar. And of course, as you can see, the subject is Escaping OS Takeover, how to properly set up Active Directory and file system permissions. So that means that we're going to be digging into all the different types of areas where we're going to analyze basically how to jump into Active Directory and how to set up the auditing, as you see within the subject. So we're going to get into technically properties of the different types of objects. Plus, I would like to show you a couple of interesting situations that are related with how to technically escape maybe the monitoring as well, and also file system permissions, which means we're going to be actually starting with this because it's a little bit easier subject. First of all, we're going to learn how these work, and I would like to start with a little bit of a riddle, and then we're going to move into explanation, basically what are the permissions and how you are actually audit them by what kind of feature. Yeah, so that's going to be one of the interesting areas as well. Yeah, so very practical 1 hour, and at the end, of course, we're gonna play a little bit with a summary where I would like to show you also a couple of interesting demonstrations on how to maybe cheat a little bit at the file system and Active Directory permissions, so that you have the full picture, full scope of information over here, and that basically will teach you all the internals of the files and AD. Anyway, just a few words, of course. Hope you guys were at Black Hat in Vegas. I'm actually just back from Black Hat in Vegas, and it has been pretty nice. Yep, cheers to you. And basically, this is what our team does from the perspective of our experience. And I'm always saying, by the way, by our team, because every single time I'm speaking, even though I'm the CEO of Secure, and we've got offices all around the world, in US, in New York, for example, though everything that we do at the end is always a team's time. So everybody's contributing to our research know-how and so on. So I'm always, of course, describing that as a team, but of course it's me speaking today, and it's me sharing knowledge, and hopefully you're going to find it useful. Don't forget the questions, and this is something that we're going to address at the very end. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's move forward. Whenever we are thinking, of course, about the file permissions, let's start immediately with best practices so that you can see that let's start with something practical, and from the very beginning we're going to focus on something easy, which means that when you are, of course, setting up and you want to set up correctly the file permissions, there are a couple of good practices, like, for example, assigning to groups that are meant for users, and I'm sure you know that if you have a couple of experience already within the IT, but I can assure you that by performing an audit of those, you will be able to see that not always everybody does this way. You may not be doing this, but some other team members, they might be, because maybe they don't know that part. And we know what's the risk over here is that if you technically take that type of an approach, then when you've got like some kind of a file audit or something, or migration, then basically on the ACLs, the only thing you're going to see is just a SID, which is not resolvable. So that doesn't look good, and it creates a bit of a mess. Of course, technically, that's in reality, it's not that much of a problem, but it just looks bad. And when you audit that types of permissions later, you're just going to see a mess. So we don't do it this way. Now, basically, whenever we are thinking about using a deny permissions, that is something that can be or should be in our team denied. So you only use them when it's necessary. And for that, I would like to show you, of course, example in a moment where we're going to be playing with the situation where deny was used. And for real, well, you will see, because the deny at the end messed up the situation a little bit, and at the end we couldn't get into conclusion that simply what is actually happening over here. Yeah, so normally security templates should be used, and in order to be able to use these templates, what I would like to show you is the way how we are able to manipulate the permissions so that you can assign certain set of permissions from the template that you create before to some other type of a resource. And that's actually quite easy, and I would like to show you the practical way how we are able to do it. And at the end, of course, we shouldn't rather change the default entries, but don't get me wrong, we are here referring only to the system objects. So as long as in the registry, for example, for security, there's only system having a full control, not administrators. Administrators cannot even read it. Then questions, of course, should we change it? And answer is not really. Yeah? So this is just for the reference. And at the end, we don't deny the group access on an object, and that's quite simple here. That's not everything, of course, but let's learn in the practical way of what we just said over here. Yeah. So first one is actually quite easy, because that refers to the groups than users, so we can skip that. But what I would like to show you is an example where deny permissions maybe should be avoided. Yeah, so let's do that. So what I will do, I may black the screen, and then right now I'm just gonna pull out that particular demonstration files here. Here we go. Yeah, so what's the situation? So here, as you can see, I've got a folder, ACLs, and inside that folder I got an outside, and inside I got an inside folder, and then I got this thing which is like, will guests read it? Yeah. So when we have a look at this, we can just go to the properties and verify if it's like really that if the guest can read it or not. So if we get into security, then you've got over here a guest account, which I'm going to select. And then over here, you've got permissions for guests, and you can see that a guest is actually allowed and denied at the same time. So it's really a question to you guys right now. What do you think? So think for the moment, can guests really read this file or not? And some of you might be thinking, well, probably not. Probably it's denied, because normally denied takes precedence. But is it really this way? Or some of you might be like, okay, well, I don't have here full information set, so why don't we just go to advanced and learn for real by having an effective access, and we can do select a user, and then we can do guest, enter, and then we can verify if the guest has an effective access. And you can see, surprise, surprise, that guest is actually allowed. So how could it be that when we have a deny and allow on the same object, we've got basically here a full control? Yeah. So this is actually a case of our customer during the migration process when they moved a certain blob of data onto the like another blob of data, and yeah, that was a situation. So their information leaked, and our job was to find out what's going on, etc. And this was technically a reason why that information leaked. Yeah. So here we are able to see that it's full control. Okay, so now probably it'll be nice to explain why like this, because it's actually quite unusual when we have a deny and allow, and then at the end we've got this. Okay, fine. Yeah, so you can see over here what's the proper way or improper way of setting up permissions. Now, this does not ring a bell right now that much if we don't know here one rule. And please have a look at first two entries. So we've got allow and deny, and allow goes first and deny goes second. And question is, does it matter? And answer is yes, it does, because please have a look. Allow is the first one on the list. It's closer to the object. We are not breaking inheritance over here, so technically it's inherited from. Yeah, and you can see over here we've got FACLs outside inside, and we've got this is the one that is closer, and the one farther is deny. Now we could be like, well, so what? Deny is on the top, so it means that it overrides all the allows. Well, not necessarily, because in this particular object, guys, allow is first on the list. And sometimes I'm laughing that this is a little bit of a Santa Claus does not exist message that deny actually is losing over here, but that is exactly the truth. Yeah. So because allow is first one on the list, that's why it's the one that is actually winning over here. Yeah. So we learned that even though deny is on, then allow can still win, and that is something that we have to learn over here if we didn't know that before. So if you're thinking what's the order of processing permissions, that's the order, where here are the most important one, and when the here are the least important ones. Yeah, so anything from the top will override in the same object, by the way, the stuff that is in the bottom. So we could be like, yeah, but that's not really clear. And don't get me wrong, GUI over here, it's not really helping us. So if we do have a look, by the way, into the properties of that particular object, yeah, and we get into let's just do cancel, because I would like to show you this one. Let's do that this way, to the left, and advance to the right. Here we go. That's this view that I want. So here, please have a look that the order of those is different. So at the authenticated user system guest administrators users on the left, and on the right we have that in a different order. Yeah. So which one is the smarter one? And I can tell you that it's one on the right, not because it's called advanced, but it's because technically it's a little bit different, because it presents us for real a security descriptor on that particular object, and that is something cool over here. So what is this security descriptor thing? So security descriptor, it's pretty much a set of data that is describing us not only permissions but also owners, auditing information, etc. And that particular security descriptor, we're able to extract, of course, from the file object, file folder, etc. Because there are plenty of security descriptors out there, service, etc., event lock. So they are all different, and registry being obvious over here. And eventually what we can do from that level, we are able to get into maybe even PowerShell and find out what is this object about. Yeah. So here we've got, this is on FACLs outside inside. Fantastic. So we can even get into folder directly. Let's just get there. Here we go. CLS. And then we can go to the ACLs outside, inside. Here we go. And then we can do ICA, CLS, and then we can choose, of course, our file. So we'll just read it. We got it. And then please have a look that that's actually quite an interesting view over here, that ones on the right are in the same order as the mid ones, yeah, as the middle ones. So here we've got guest, administrator, system, etc., and right, left we've got the same, yes, or middle, right, we've got the same. So yeah, here we go. So here, by the way, we've got guest full and guest no. So first one is the guest full control, and guest one is no control. Yeah, so also very, very interesting to see that. So yes, so we can conclude that ICA-CLS is actually giving us a full security descriptor. Is there a different way, by the way, to display it? Yes, so that I can be 100% sure how it looks like. Yes, and what I want to teach you guys right now on that particular lesson is that A, how to audit these permissions, B, to understand how do they actually work, and C, how does a security descriptor work, so that we are able to jump into SDDL, for example, security definition descriptive language. If this is the first time you're hearing it, you should definitely know it. And then at the end, from that particular SDDL, you should know how to read a particular permissions from the file. You might be wondering, okay, why that? Why do I need to know it? And answer is very straightforward, because GUI, it's absolutely not allowing us to conclude something quickly. You just have to figure it out. So you're like, oh, guess is this, guess is that, administrators is this. No, not really. Let's have a look at how security descriptor looks like. So if we go to the PowerShell, we can get into get ACL. And then we can do we'll guess read it for the file. And let me just put this one on the top. And then we can do FL for format list. So here, what you can see is the SDDL. So that's the security descriptor. Let's make it a full screen. And over here, so let's do it again. That particular security descriptor, and what is interesting for us is these two items here. Yeah, so I'm going to select them. So these two items, by the way, so we've got an A that stands for allow, and we've got a D that stands for deny. So these two items, it's nothing but the SDDL, security definition descriptive language. Now, very useful language, by the way, when you are performing any type of audit, very useful language when you are performing any type of quick checks, and also the pen test, by the way, penetration test, because why do we need this? Well, long story short, this is also something that you could use, for example, to stop an antivirus. So if you do have an antivirus that is actually relying on the security string, and not to really name them, but some of them they do, then basically this is the way how you are able to stop it. But of course, you have to be privileged enough. Yeah. So for that, we have to be local administrators or members of local administrators group, which have a possibility to elevate to local system, and by default every administrator for real has this. Yeah, so here we're able to see that security descriptor. Now let's analyze this. What does it say? So it says allow, inherited, this one. Then we can see full access, this one, LG for local guest, deny, inherited, full access, local guest. Yeah, so that is basically the situation. Yeah. Now, whenever we are thinking about the analysis of that, please have a look that allow goes first, deny goes second, and this ID is standing for inheritance. It's not really something that we are worried about over here. It's just there. Inheritance is just there, but where you are actually inheriting it from, it doesn't matter. The closer to us, the ones that is applied first, that's the allow, and allow overrides deny. And here it's easier to understand it because effectively here you're analyzing them from left to right, and that's awesome because it's easy. Yeah, since we know the rule. Yeah, we know the rule that what goes first overrides the rest. So what does it mean? This first, the easiest way to check for it is to actually look at the PowerShell, which will display us this SDDL string. So as you see, guys, it's actually quite straightforward. So with this little riddle right now, I wanted to start the intro into file system permissions and what is important about them. Yeah. Okay, great. So what do we need to know, guys? Because one thing is, of course, auditing, like we just did, reviewing, etc. But another thing is actually to get into a little bit more details in SDDL for sure, but also certain type of ways of how you can audit those. So when you set up a certain files, folders, even Active Directory permissions, they're all described in SDDL and also in 32-bit mask. So now we could be thinking, why do we care? Well, you do care, especially if you have an enterprise or like a larger organization, let's call it this way, and you are interested, like, is everybody having enough permissions? And what's the status? So basically, once we get there, here we go, what we can do is to get ACL, see Windows. Let me do it. Windows, and then we can do for that FL for format list. And this is basically what I would like to show you. So here we've got something that is a number, and then we've got NT service trusted installer allow 268.435, etc. And that, by the way, stands for the full access. Now it's interesting because if we do have a look at all these different types of items here, yeah, so this is the order that we have from the security descriptor, etc. And then our job will be actually to verify if the trusted installer account has something. Yeah, so we've got certain type of users, and we've got over here our full access, so that is specified over here. Yeah, so that's is really something to look at. Now, please have a look at one thing. Here we've got A, and we've got CIIO, GA, and then we've got a SID of the user that ends up with something 64. Yeah, and then we've got AFA, and then we've got SID that ends up with something, and then here 64. Yeah, so what does it mean? It means that we've got the same account assigned with a different types of permissions. Now, what is this referring to? Well, we can have a look over here, and if we do calculate from the back, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of permissions. So we've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's like a 5, 6. So that's basically from the bottom. No doubt it's a trusted installer. Okay, so full control and then 268, etc. So what's the difference? The difference is that this 268, etc., that stands for, logically, we're able to spot that, GA, and full control stands for full access. And GA stands for generic all, by the way. So here's the story behind it. If we do have a look at the calculator, and if we take this calculator, and if we do basically type in 268, 435, and 456, yeah, and then we can take this number, programmer, oh, I need to type it again, sorry about this. So let's do it again. 268, I kind of thought that it's going to convert it, 435, and 456. Yep, so please do have a look. Here, the number, it's just beautiful. Yeah, so it's just like very, very nice. Now, that must be some kind of a magic number. And we already know that that number stands for GA, totally. So here's your thing. So basically, that stands for GA, that stands for generic all, which means actually built-in system full control. And here, that particular bit, so one of the most important bits, it's set to 1, and this is basically this number. So this, by the way, leaves no doubt that permissions, it's nothing but a 32-bit flag where you're able to set them up by just enabling different types of bits in this particular flag. Now, why we are saying this? Because you guys need to understand that when we've got some specific special permissions, they are verified and like everything pretty much by this particular bits that you have set over here. Yeah, so what's the flow? So moving forward, if we do have a look at this full access, so what's the difference in between this, so GA and full access? GA is preset by the operating system, so built-in permission types, and full access, so FA, it's something that is preset by you. And I know that in Windows we don't really preset the full access, but what I just wanted to show you is that we do have this possibility to set up, of course, full control on the different types of files and folders, and you can always do it, but then it will not be GA, but it's going to be full access. So if you're auditing something, full access will not have this flag, it will have a different flag, but what kind of flag is this? We're going to learn in a second, and this is basically why you're here. So how can we audit this particular flag? So how do I know what kind of number this thing has? An answer to that is very straightforward. Let's get into PowerShell and let's just jump into a couple of commands, and we're going to learn that lesson very quickly. So perfect. So let's have a look. So we're going to do it this way. System, let's just start typing. Okay, CLS, let's do that. And let's find out. For some reason, my font is like this. Okay, here we go. And now, okay. It's my unfortunate color. Let me just get into the PowerShell ICE. Why not? We can do it this way. And in the PowerShell ICE, it's going to be better. And within the PowerShell ICE, we're going to play with that part here. So ready to rock. Here we go. Yes, so we've got this one. Yep. We can type it over here. It's fine. Yeah. Okay, great. So we're going to do it this way. First of all, we're going to choose the namespace, and that namespace is system enum, like this. And then we're going to get into get names this time. Here we go. And then we're going to list everything from the namespace, which is system, security, access control, file system rights. And we got this and closing, and we can execute this one. Yeah, so basically, let's just enter. And this is something that gives us a full set of possible permissions that we have in general in Windows operating system. And that's pretty awesome, because with this, you're able to pretty much list and audit every single type of permission by just auditing a flag. Let me explain that a little bit more to give you some inspiration over here, and that's actually a pretty nice approach. This is how we do it, by the way, at our customer side. So we've got this, and we can specify that we would like to get the integer value of the system. Let's just have it like this, system. And again, same story, security, and we can get into access control, and we can get into file system rights. Yep, perfect. And then we can specify over here that we would like to get, and this is already the list that you can see, a full control enter, and we got this. And then basically, yeah, let's close that with this particular, in this particular way. Oh no, we already did that. Sorry, my fault. We can do it this way over here. I've forgotten. Yep, here we go. And that will be that way. 1 and 2. Perfect. Okay, so that gives us a value. Yeah, so we've got a 203, 21, 27. Yeah, so this is basically full control. So you can see the difference that GA was a bigger number, and this number we haven't seen before, but that's just a full control. So that's the full control, which is not preset by the operating system. It's a preset by the user. That's why, and this is how, by the way, you are able to recognize the difference. And that's pretty nice over here. Okay, so how would it be actually, just with the quick approach, to at that certain point list and assign all the numbers to the permissions, so that at the end you know how to assign them or how to audit them in your organization. So let's just do it this way. So we've got our integer, etc. And we're going to specify like this for each. We're going to keep it for the moment, and we're going to specify the variable, it could be $I, whatever, in, and then we can specify our, again, system, or we can just delete this so that we don't have to type it. So we got a system, security, access control, etc. So we're going to do into, let's just do it this way. Here we go, system enum. So for each of the values that we are enumerating over here, get names. Okay, from there, we've got a system, security, access control, etc. Yeah, so for each of the names that we have over here, we're going to do the following. Yes, we not one more. And we're going to do over here, right. So here we go. So this is for the get names. So you're closing the function. And then we've got this. We're closing the loop over here. And we're going to do right. So as for the command, and we're just going to be write host, and then we're going to do $I, so write the name, and calculate on the top of that integer value, as you already know what to do. And we're going to choose the over here the namespace. So again, system, security, and file access control, of course, access control, and then file system rights. Here we go. And from that value, so closing, we're going to run $I, and then we need to close the whole deal here. Okay, fine. So what happened here? Not the O, but of course I. Here we go. That's perfect. So we can see over here clearly that by just leveraging the way of how system pretty much processes particular permissions over here, then we are able to audit those and have the numbers. So what's the inspiration coming in over here? Very straightforward. Every single type of permission that you are ever having in Windows, it's written in the flag it's always auditable, and it's always measurable. So this is pretty much the way how you are able to measure most of your permissions on the different types of file structures. Yeah, so that's something to look at. Okay, so this is a little bit of that. Now, whenever we are thinking, of course, about playing with different types of files, etc., then what is important to know is that we are able to actually play with the different types of templates, and we can actually do it nicely within the PowerShell. So let's have a look, and we're going to be changing different types of permissions on the certain object, and then changing them again back based on the templates. Yeah, so let's have a look. Same, by the way, if we do play around, you can also have the same type of permissions that you've got on the registry. Just for the reference, we can do get ACL, and then we can do HKLM, and then that also refers to the registry. Yeah? So you got software, and then you've got something. Yes, so it could be pretty much. We could keep it this way, and then of course you've got a little bit of details, but only if you display format list and the same numbers you guys already recognize, and the same way of typing and creating the SDDL. Okay, fine. So I hope that this is crystal clear. And now it's time to play with the assignment of permissions. So setting them up, what would be the fastest way really to do that? Yeah. So that basically is going to work like this. We're going to do get ACL, and we're going to refer to this some kind of a secure academy tool. So we can choose the ACL file, whatever, we can have it. And we can see that unfortunately PowerShell by default doesn't display it correctly. So you need to do full format list. And then of course, SDDL, it's fully written over here. So whatever that is, it's something, yes? So it's not that important right now. And what we're gonna do, we will actually take this particular set of permissions and we're gonna assign it somewhere else, yes? So we can always do it. So we can do get ACL, etc. And you can of course save it into a variable, yeah? So we can do that. So it's gonna be our permissions, and then basically we can do permissions. Once again, sorry, typo. Permissions, here we go. Yeah, so we've got this, and yeah, that's just permissions for that particular file. So right now, we can have start dot, and we can add over here some type of a permissions here. Yeah, so we can do that. So I'm going to do it on my side, where I'll be assigning these permissions on the particular dtools file. So let me do it. And from now on with the PowerShell, we'll be actually analyzing and changing that particular permissions and assigning these permissions, this particular permissions, to some other file. Yeah, so that's going to be the job. Yeah, so I'm just looking at this D tools. Here we go. And within the D tools, we've got an ICE file, 1. Very good. That's this one. And if you go security, yep, over here, we can add someone. Of course, granularly, it's not good, but that's the situation. Okay, fine, fine, fine. We can do, of course, the same story with the get ACL. Let's do it. Here we go. And then for the variable, and here we go for the file. And then you can see that that looks a little different, a little longer, because we are actually assigning over here the sit of Paula. Yeah, so that's the setup, and this is where it starts. And because we have added our permissions last, then you are able to see that this 1001 is actually my account. Okay, fine. Yeah, so now we can take this particular permission. So we can do, of course, permissions get ACL. So variable permissions is going to be a little different this time. Here we go. Just to verify. Oh, why am I typing this? That's funny. Permissions. Here we go. Yep, so that's perfect, and you can see that it's the same, of course. And then we can do set that on the particular type of file. Yeah, so we can get into, let me do it, set ACL, fantastic, and then we can choose something, whatever that will be. Secure Academy webinar zip. Okay, fantastic. So we've got this particular package, and that's it. Yeah, so we are setting up the particular permissions from the variable permissions. Yeah. And of course, question is, can we do it? Yeah. So it's another case. If we can't assign the permissions, then you will not be able to do much. Yeah. So this is the setup. Now, not a problem here. We can choose like some other item, some other object, and we could choose whatever that will be from the tools folder. And that is something that will totally work. Yeah. So we can actually try. And we can, you will see the concept. CQ tools, and then we can choose something, CQ tools CXT, for example. Yeah, and the OCL object is in the permissions, and for some reason in my system actually it doesn't work, which is very strange. I want to verify why is that, but there should be absolutely no reason for that to actually not work. But yeah, but this is pretty much the way how you can do it. Okay, so you can also get into expanded access for the setting up the particular permissions. And this is how you would normally do it. So you're going to specify in this particular case, so let's just do get ACL. Yep. And for the certain file, yeah, for CQ tool and for us, CQ tools, it's okay. This was one, okay, so that has a certain set of permissions. Yeah, and we can see it's different. I wonder why it didn't say we didn't assign, because it says argument exception. Yeah, so okay, fine. So one of the options. But in general, in order to move forward with the permissions, you can audit them this way. Okay, guys. So what's next? The next one will be the permissions that are related with the different types of privileges in the operating system. So we can get into, for example, the folder that I have over here, which is called backup read. Oh, just a second. So it should be there. Oh yeah, I know. Okay, sorry about this, my confusion. It should be a different machine. So let me get to the different machine. Here we go. That's this guy here that I have running. And then I will show you this on the pre-prepared approach. So pre-prepared station, where we've got the privileges of the backup, as we call it. Let me explain it first before we move forward. And that particular privileges, it's nothing but a backup read, backup write. So something that we call a backup mode in the, for example, robocopy. But in general, yeah, that's the way how you're able to bypass certain types of credentials that are on the folder. Yeah, and that particular backup privilege is something that you've got well, technically to perform backup, but what does it mean to do it? So you perform backup when you are able to copy files that you normally have no access to. And after that, we're going to get into a certain type of a privilege where you will be actually able to bypass any type of another type of a permission that is given to the folder. Okay, so before we get there, just a few words about the privileges that override sometimes different types of permissions. And I'm not saying that the privileges are stronger, but they're definitely the ones that usually work higher, a little bit higher in the concept. So if we get into the user rights assignment, there's a couple of permission related privileges that are for us worth having a look. Yeah, one of those is this one over here, backup files and directories. And backup files and directories, it's fun because as we see by the privilege, well, we can use it for the backing up files and directories, but is it for real like this? Answer is yes, because if someone is in the member or in the group of backup operator, then basically you are able to perform pretty much any type of an activity like this, so that you are able to access the files that you normally have no access to. So let's get into explanation. And this one says backup files and folders. That user right that determines which users can bypass file and folder and so on, and other different types of permissions. So that's quite fun, because if we think about it, that means that well, they are giving here different types of attributes, different types of parameters, where you are able to actually bypass those. Yes, so that is the membership, for example, for the backup operators group. Okay, so that's the first thing, and then it gives you, as you see, permissions in place. And that's a bit strange, but yes, that's the situation. And then it says, hey, assigning this user right can be a security risk since there is no way to be sure that the user is backing up data, etc. Well, there is never sure of what a user does. That's why saying and calling them a trusted users, it's a bit of an inconvenience over here, because I'm always laughing that the only user that I trust is the one that I look in the mirror at every morning. But yeah, who knows? Maybe you have trusted users, so you are in such a situation very lucky. Okay, so what is this backup privilege about? Backup privilege is when we get into backup mode. Backup, once again. Backup read, here we go. And then we try to copy out something. So we can do copy, and then the whole content of the backup read. Here we go, into something that we can just choose whatever that will be. Yeah, so we could just name it somewhere, save it somewhere. We need to make sure that there's like no file that I'm interested in. And this one says access is denied. And that makes sense because we are not here elevating our search, or we are not enabling a privilege that allows us to use this particular permission or to overcome this particular permission. So how can we use this privilege? Is there any like a tool that will switch to make this privilege enabled? And answer is yes, because if we do whoami/o, yep, it's a pretty long list. You can see that this one, SE debug programs, is disabled. So this is actually one of the most privileged privileges. And the one that we are talking about are these two. So we got a backup files and directories, restore files and directories. And we are interested in backup right now to show you the permissions case. But yeah, let me of course demonstrate that. So if we get into robocopy, and then you copy, of course, a certain type of a file. So we got a backup read, or we're trying to do that. Then basically, yep, it will say, hey, there is one file that has been skipped. Yeah, so this is this one. Now we can get into CD blob. And by the way, I've already played with this file. So we can do delete private txt. And once the file is not there, then if we launch the robocopy, it will actually do this and wait for the remaining 30 seconds, which is also quite funny, but why not? Maybe to change your mind that you actually want these permissions, who knows? But effectively, this is the monitoring of the backup privilege. Yeah, so you guys need to know that permissions and setting up permissions is not everything. It's really a matter of groups that have access to your files due to having certain type of permissions, but they're also privileges. And privileges, it's not something we can ignore because they are affecting purely permissions in the operating system. Yeah, so that's a bit of a summary. It's trying every 30 seconds. So you're wondering, okay, fine, but I do have a privilege because I'm the administrator and I'm also the backup operator. So what do I need to do? So over here, within the robocopy, use the B switch, and the B switch allows you to copy this particular file. And then it says copied one, as you see. And what it means is that the B switch enables the privilege that I showed you from the disabled state to the enabled state. Yeah, so for the fact that it's disabled, it doesn't really matter over here. Yeah, so it's just that's it. Yes, you can always enable it, but if it's not on your list, so when you do whoami/all and that particular privilege is not there, then it means you cannot have it until you are in a kernel mode and until you are rootkit, etc. And you're manipulating operating systems eventually privileges, so it means your token, which you can do, by the way. In Windows you don't need to be local system, but then you will need to add yourself a permission for the token creation. Yeah, so and token modification. So these are the ones that are worth having a look at. Okay guys, so now whenever we are thinking, of course, about that situation, what I would like to show you is the momentum where we're able to set up over here a folder. Let's name it somehow, BT. And inside, I'm going to create another folder. And then we can have BT1. And over here, we're going to create a file. And we're going to name it bt.txt. Okay, fine. So our job right now is to actually break the inheritance over here. So let's go to advanced. Not in here, of course, but here is security. Advanced. We can do disable. Okay. And then what we can do, we can deny administrator to actually be able to change some content here. Here we go. Freddy is not about to do that. Administrator is totally not able to do it. Okay, yes, you're about to shoot into your own knee. Fine, thank you. So if I try to enter this guy, then it says permanently access is denied. Okay, fine. So one of the ways, yeah. So effectively, how can I get into the folder without really knowing things? And that answer is very simple. In Windows, we have two types of permissions for browsing items and like folders, for example. That is take ownership. But what you can do over here, you can traverse and you can do the list directory. Yeah. So if we get into that particular folder that we have just secured, so the one that is on the desktop, so let's move into that area. Here we go. Yes. So we can do ICA CLS, and then let's just do BT1. And then you can see what is the descriptor. So it says Freddy Krueger cannot do, administrators cannot do, building admins cannot do, local security authorities of system can do. Okay, so we can either elevate, but then what if someone takes that out from the local system? Then it's a different story. But in general, you can elevate, and then from the local system's perspective, browse certain types of folders. Or what you can do, you can also do one more thing. Bypass, it's called bypass traverse checking. Yeah, so my fault. So let's get into the folder. So maybe watch this once again. Here we go. And then we can do it like, we can actually browse it this way. So once we give a path, so it's like this, and then we've got bt.txt. Then basically this file can open. For some reason, it didn't. I wanted to see why, of course. So we've got a bt, bt1, etc. bt.txt. Let's have a look how that works within the PowerShell. Okay, fine. Or eventually Notepad as well. So we've got this one, Notepad, and then we can get into desktop, BT, here we go. And then this one, no. Yeah, so we can give it a name. Let me verify. BT1. So as for the folder, and then we got bt.txt. Can find it. Yeah, maybe I did the ph then. Sorry about this. Here we go. What is it? It looks like it cannot find it. I wonder what was the case. Was it txt.txt? Oh, that's really weird, because that's not how it's supposed to be done. We're supposed to actually be able to see it. Let me try to do it one more time. So get a bt1, and then we get a bt.txt. So it's for the order, maybe just adding that until the end. So we're gonna the folder, and we're gonna bt.txt. Just find out. One, of course, then bt.txt. For some reason, check spelling and then okay. That's actually quite interesting. I need to see why is that. So we've got our bt. We can actually do the same story. So we're gonna bt2. Fine. Let's just do this one. Okay, and then new.
Let's call it bt2.txt. 100%. We've got extensions, so we can get to the same place and choose this bt2 thing. Let's see if we can do it. Windows and so on, or I can just do desktop, and then we get a bt, and then we have to type the rest. bt2, and then bt.txt. No, let's see. Seriously, why does it choose this path? bt2. bt2, and then bt.2.txt. Okay, fine. This one opens. I just want to confirm, like, it's all good. Okay, fine. Okay, the folder. Just one more thing. Let's just do it this way. My fault for the auditing. So we're gonna get into security right now, advanced, and we're gonna do disable inheritance, convert. That's totally fine. And we're doing this on the file. So there was, there was the problem on the folder, but Freddy is fine, administrators is fine, edit, and we can deny this guy access to that particular place. So we got a bt2.txt. So let's go to Notepad again, open, and what just happens? Yay, one more thing. Of course, we should not do it this way. Let's just play with this one here. We're gonna do bt maybe. Okay, this one should go out, by the way. And this one should be properties, security, advanced. Let's just play with it a little bit. So we're gonna set them here. So right now we have disabled inheritance, but we do have access to this file. But we're gonna play with that denial on the folder. So we get a bt inside, and here we're gonna do edit, and then the starters, guys, we're gonna do apply, yep, and fine. So now we should be ready. Okay, fine. So file, and then we can do open. Okay, fine, it's not getting there automatically, which is a confirmation that it doesn't have permissions. And over here, we can get into our desktop, bt2, and this one says you don't have permissions. Fine, and then we do it like this, bt2. We try to enter. As you see, we can take an inheritance, so it's not really the point. So once again, bt2, and we can do bt.txt. Now it's perfect. Okay, so you can see, by the way, finally we get there, that you are able to set up permissions on the files like this, and that is something that is pretty much bypassable. Okay, guys, so we've got this. Now, Active Directory wise, what is important for us to know is how to enable or set up the permissions on the particular sets of objects, but from the perspective of one thing is the delegation, but the second one is the auditing, of course, of the accounts that you guys might have. So this is exactly what I would like to show you, and the question is, of course, how can we get to the full auditing of every single time someone is actually added to the domain admins group? You will be able to know that. Yeah, so let's have a look at the whole concept. Yeah, so we've got here Active Directory users and computers. So we've got this, and then we can go view menu, and then what you need to guys have is the advanced features. Yeah, so just saying, some of you may already have it, but in general, right, just saying. Okay, and then we need to specify which type, technically the work group we would like to use for the auditing, and this is a demo environment. Yeah, so basically I can specify some kind of a new group or something like that, and then basically if someone is a member of that group, these guys will be able to audit that particular folder. Yeah. So technically that's the case. But let's do it this way. So we're gonna do a new, and then we're gonna do group, and then we're gonna name it whatever that would be, service OU. That's this guy over here. Fantastic. And then let's go to the properties, and let's go to the security tab, and let's get into advanced. By the way, as you see, these permissions are different here, and they are still represented by the same flag. Yeah. So we've got a little bit of a summary. Now, when we get into advanced security settings for the service OU, then we can get into an auditing tab, as simple as this. And basically, you can specify who is actually, when someone is added to the particular OU, etc., then you will be notified. So it could be, for example, domain admin, yes. But here, what I just wanted to show you is you are able to specify here, so we can select the principal, certain object name who will be having access to this group and being notified. Here we go. So I typed in some kind of a guy, and we've got that. And here you got the possibility to select successful and unsuccessful items. Yes, so this is pretty nice.
I think we lost Paula, you guys. Let's give her 1 second to rejoin. Okay, I think we lost her, you guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to hand this over to Bill. He's going to dive back into the presentation, talking about Beyond Trust. And then if Paula gets back on by the time that he finishes, then we'll go ahead and give her back the keyboard and presenter mode. So Bill, if you could go ahead and jump off of mute and dive into a couple of things I know you wanted to touch base on before the end of the session. Thanks.
Absolutely. So thank you for the opportunity here. So what we're going to be covering today is our PowerBroker Auditor suite here. So what we're discussing is really the ability for your organization to audit changes within Active Directory, file system, SQL, and Exchange, and centralize that reporting in a single interface, an MMC console, and then be able to be notified about all those changes. So obviously, a lot of the stuff that Paula was covering here is kind of relevant to auditing for Active Directory here. So again, I mentioned, centralizing those real-time changes from AD, File Systems, Exchange, SQL, also NetApp. We can do entitlement reporting, meaning let's go ahead and collect all the permissions that are out there within the organization around, your Active Directory as well as your file systems, and centralize that. Also, the ability to do backups for your Active Directory and recover online. So we're not talking about really, recovering an entire domain controller or forest here. What we're talking about are, accidental deletions that may occur within Active Directory and being able to quickly recover from that as well. Really, how this works, there's a few steps here. Obviously, so down at the bottom, you're going to be, as an administrator, you would log into our console and basically deploy agents out to your domain controllers. So our agents are capturing changes in real time, and those changes are then captured and sent back to a SQL database backend. I can also do role delegation within the console to allow my security and compliance officers, other operations members, to be able to go ahead and report against all the different changes within the organization, so that they don't need administrative rights to basically log in and do those things. So let's go ahead and let me just hop into my console view here. So I'm basically in the PowerBroker Auditor management console here, and I've got a few different nodes that are enabled here. You see Active Directory, SQL, Exchange, file system, etc. So we're going to focus a little around the Active Directory component. Again, I mentioned that there's agents that are required to be able to do your auditing real time. So we can actually deploy agents directly from here. We can go ahead and push agents out to our entire domain or specific domain controllers. We also support TLS 1.2 and for additional security around SQL as well. And then to be able to deploy these agents directly from the console, I obviously need domain administrator permissions on those DCs in order to push the agent and deploy that. We'll also have those agents communicate directly back with the actual console itself. Hang on a second. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. We'll actually have those agents communicate directly back to the console itself, and they'll basically send the events that are captured directly back into SQL so that I can report on those changes. So we're talking about any change to or within Active Directory on any attributes we can be alerted on, report on, etc. So really a big benefit for you to be able to see this data real time. We don't need any additional auditing turned on within the directory. So we're not relying on that. No one's going to be able to basically cover their tracks if changes have been made, etc. You're going to be able to capture all of those changes. So just a quick example here, if we were to go ahead and let's say make a change, and let me go into my users OU here under my domain administrators, and let's go ahead and add somebody in here. Let's focus on Victoria, and we'll check names here. So we're just going to simply add Victoria into our domain administrators group, click on OK. That change is now captured real time. It's being sent back to the console. So within the management console here, I've got what we call our audit views. This is our audit view section. I can set up different permissions here to allow my different users to come in and be able to, execute reports. We can also customize our reports as well to be able to see what's going on here. So I've got a few that are built here. We'll just look at the quick properties of my all changes in the last 24 hours. So this report is built into the console, but really it's focused on not a specific who made the change. We're looking at everyone that made the change, whatever workstation it may have occurred from, and whatever domain controller captured that change. Also in the what value, we're not focused on any what. This is an all-inclusive search that we're doing right here. The where, we're going to, again, all-inclusive. We're looking for all objects, and when, it's focused on the last day, hence the last 24 hours of changes that we're going to capture. We can also schedule these reports to run, so I can create my own schedules, automate a report to be generated via PDF, XML, CSV, or HTML, sent out to a specific file location, or directly emailed from here. So this report's going to show me basically everything that's occurred over the last 24 hours when I go ahead and execute it. And when it comes up, what I'm going to be able to see here is, let me make sure that I've got my changes here that have occurred. This has been sitting for a minute, so we may need to wait a second here. And so we got Lawrence. She may have been added to. There we go. So there's my change that just occurred here. So I could see that there's a few nested changes that we're capturing as well. So we might want to be able to do some additional filtering on this to see this. This is all changes that have occurred. But basically right here, we're seeing that Victoria Lawrence was added to the domain admins group by the administrator. So we're able to see all the details around that as well. We're also able to see where that change occurred, what actually happened, and I can see the members change for that specific group has occurred. We're also capturing nested group changes, right? So we've also got the default administrator group here. She was also added to based on that add to the domain administrators group. I can go ahead and directly do rollbacks, etc. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a different report to kind of clean things up, because I do have a report, and this report is, or this audit view is actually focused on, again, not a specific who, but we're looking at group modifications, deletions, etc. on the domain admins group. So this is going to be a little more specific to the actual change that we just made. And when this report runs, we should be able to see the same thing. There we go. There's our Victoria. She was added to the domain admins group. I see all the details here. I can quickly roll that change back here. I also have a rollback queue. So let's say there are several events that have occurred within your Active Directory that you want to go ahead and roll back. You can consistently add these to a queue and they'll build up, and then you can go ahead and roll them all back, or you can simply select to remove that. Highlight her change here one more time. Let's go ahead and roll that change back right now. So we'll go ahead and roll that back. We'll see a few changes here. So if, again, this is changes to the domain admin. She should be removed by now, so I should see that as well. So there you go. There's her removal based on that rollback. And if we wanted to go ahead and look within Active Directory here, and if I go in my domain admins group, Victoria should no longer be a member. Simple as that. In addition to changes that have occurred within, let's say, group memberships or any other attribute, we can also capture changes to things such as group policy. So I've got a couple of group policies up here. I'm going to play around with the default domain policy, and I'll get into my security settings here. Bear with me, and we'll expand this out. I'll go into my account policies, my password policy. So for something like this is obviously critical for an Active Directory infrastructure that we want to know when something like this changes. So let's go ahead and just modify this. Let's go ahead and make the default, I don't know, we'll make it 3 characters, for example. We'll apply that. So that change, again, is happening within AD. We can go ahead and reflect that within our same audit view that we were looking at. So if I come back to my, close this out, I come back into my management console. I'm going to again focus on all changes over the last 24 hours. And we'll execute that report. And I should see some changes that have occurred. So we can see an object version change in Active Directory, right? This is the actual AD component of group policy that's being changed. The version number is changing in AD, but the file-based component within the group policy is changing, and that's what we were looking at. So we can see that the computer-based minimum password length group policy was changed to 3 for the default domain policy, and we can also see the old value as well. So I can see what the old value was and the new value. Now, rollback from a group policy is a little bit different, but we can go ahead and recover from a change like that. Excuse me one second, things are just not working with me here. So what we can do from a group policy perspective is we can install the RSAT tool. So I have those installed, meaning we've installed our RSAT extensions as a part of the PowerBroker Auditor line, and I have my own group policy management console installed. No schema changes required whatsoever in order for this to operate. But directly in here, I can go ahead and select rollback. So I can go ahead and roll those contents back, and I can look at some of my different data sources, meaning my backup. So if I wanted to go ahead and let's say use this backup that I ran 40 minutes ago, I can do that, and what will come up is we'll actually see the changes merged from what's active within the directory and then what that actual backup contains. So if I expand this out and I were to scroll down here, you can actually see the differences right here. So now that I have that set, and that's the policy I want to go back to, I can simply click on the rollback, and at the bottom here, it'll indicate that the GPO was successfully restored. We can then go ahead and come back and edit our policy. I'm not sure why my mouse refuses to come back. I wonder if it's something to do with our WebEx or something, but oops. Give this a second. And let's get into my Windows settings, security, account policy, password policy, and there we are. We're back to 7. So we're back to the change, and that change will also be reflected because within the management console, within the audit view, because of the fact that again that change occurred actually in Active Directory, and rolling that back is a change that we capture as well. So any changes that are occurring, we can go ahead and effectively roll back from, regardless of where it's changed. In addition to that, let's say somebody were to come along and maybe go ahead and right-click or run a script, for example, to go ahead and maybe perform something not necessarily malicious, maybe accidental. So let's say somebody came along and went ahead and wiped out an entire OU, and I do not have the protection enabled. So that OU is now gone. Again, I'll be able to see that change, all changes in my last 24 hours. If I go ahead and execute that report, I'll see a number of different deletions in here. One of those will be my OU. It'll show me that that was deleted, so I can see that. I can go ahead and roll that back now, but I can also go ahead and do a full-on recovery from that. So leveraging my Active Directory RSAT extensions, we put in a recycle bin down here. So I'm looking at the Tombstone objects container, and I can see all the different components within the Tombstone objects. I can go ahead and then reanimate that as well. So I can go ahead and select restore. I'll select my data source, meaning this is the only backup that I have that contains that. I can consistently run backups. All of our backups that we run as a part of PowerBroker Auditor are actually deltas, so they're really set up to be very efficient and very quick. We can go ahead and select advanced, meaning if I'm restoring my user accounts that might be a part of that OU, SID history and password isn't stored when I actually delete an object from the directory and put it into the Tombstone objects container. So if I wanted, I could go ahead and set a new password for that. You can go ahead and change a flag within the schema so that when objects are deleted within the directory, those attributes are also stored while the objects are put into the Tombstone container, which is what I have. So when I reanimate all of my users and groups and everything, everything's exactly as it was. And I can also force this to write to a send to a specific domain controller and force replication. So I go ahead and do that. It's going to take a second. That's going to go ahead and restore that OU. And if I hit refresh here, it should be removed from my container. I'm going to come back into my BT users. I'm going to highlight that and hit refresh. There's my HR. There's everyone back. Group memberships as well, all restored, everything back. So it's really a quick way to go ahead and enable you to recover without having to do a lot of the different steps that are involved in a recovery PowerShell or anything of that nature to be able to restore. Hopefully we're doing well so far. Obviously, if there's any questions, we'll be able to get to those at the end. The next piece here that I wanted to kind of reference in the interest of time was our SQL Auditor. So this actually is another agent that's deployed out to your boxes that may have SQL Server installed to be able to audit for changes within SQL. So once the agent's deployed there, it's actively capturing changes. So if I were to go ahead and open my SQL Management Console and go into my logins and say new login, let's just go ahead and create a test user here, webinar user 2, for example. I'm just going to use SQL authentication, quick password, for example. You can go ahead, I'm going to uncheck password history just to create this user. So that user's been created within the security. Role modifications, etc., those are all captured as well. But just to show you back into our PowerBroker Management Console here, we also have our built-in audit views. I'm going to go into those, and again, I've got to focus here on the all changes in the last 24 hours. So this is actually going to show me, hopefully everything works. I have a new user here created. There's a new login that's been created. So all those modifications within a SQL database, we can capture those notifications, alerting, etc. That's all part of the application. So that's really the SQL piece, just very high level. Obviously, we're happy to cover some things more in detail. But then there's also the Exchange piece. So again, an agent is required for this. So really the focus from an Exchange perspective, most of the components within Exchange are stored as a part of Active Directory. We're already capturing those with the AD Auditing component on the domain controller. However, with Exchange, we can also capture some additional components. So I'm going to go ahead and connect into my Outlook as M. Davis here. Let's say password for everything. We're going to connect as a standard user into Outlook. So, Martha's in her Outlook, let's say, and she's got rights to be able to open another mailbox, for example. So maybe she goes ahead and opens the CEO mailbox. Once she goes ahead and opens that mailbox, if she's got rights, she can go ahead and gain access. Another benefit here is if I've got administrators who have rights to be able to do this, I don't necessarily know what they're doing. So this is a good way to, keep track of, keep some people honest within the organization, because, obviously if they're opening, emails that may be, certain confidential information, I might want to know about this. So that this change has occurred, we do capture this change as well. I'll come into my built-in audit views. I'm going to go into my mailbox activity. I'm going to focus on non-owner mailbox access as well. So we'll go ahead and run this report. And I'll see here that there's been a bunch of changes recently. So depending on what I have the agent auditing, I'm going to capture all of those changes. so that I could see here this confidential email was open. So we could see that Martha Davis email was read in the sent items folder, and we could see the details around that. So again, capturing these changes real time, sending them back is really the key piece for the Power Broker Auditor around SQL Exchange and Active Directory as well. We also do file system also. So one of the pieces for around the Power Broker Auditor for file system, no surprise, we do require an agent that's deployed out there, but the agent can be configured, and you'll see that there's a filters tab. This is really controlling the behavior of what do you want the agent to actually audit for. When I deploy an agent out to Active Directory, it actually already knows what to look for in the directory. When I'm talking about file systems or Exchange, those are the things that we need to really specify within a filter. So here I've got a filter, and within the properties here, I'm just telling the agent, I want you to start looking out for everyone. Maybe you want to exclude things like your normal backup programs, etc. You don't need to know who did what within that. I want to focus on specific directories. We can also exclude certain file types, etc. within the directories. And what am I looking for? So you'll see a number of different things. If I uncheck this box and check it here, we're going to give you a warning, right? So if we're auditing for things like reads and opens, it can generate enormous number of events if I'm focused on a specific directory or whatever. So just to make sure that you guys are careful with this type of thing, that's why we indicate that as well. But if somebody were to go ahead and make a change to a file or a permission on a file or whatever, we can capture that change. Now, in the interest of reporting here as well across all the different platforms, we do have a web-based console. I'm going to hop over to it here for a second, expand this out. So I have made some changes within the file system component here. So you could see it a little while ago, things like file security was updated. So I can drill into this particular event and, oops, sorry about that. See that detail here. So we can see the on this payroll.txt, the file system event details. So the security was updated. This is going to be a real indicator to give you more knowledge to go ahead and poke around on those systems to find out exactly, what was the change, and then actually see that here. So within the console, within the web-based console, it's a little, it's a little more lightweight. It's a little easier to use. I can set up different roles here. I can also, filter the audit views. I can open up different audit views if I wanted to look at, let's say, that mailbox stuff that we were looking at as well. Let's say non-owner mailbox, I could go ahead and load that audit view also right here, and we would actually see the mailbox audits that we were looking for. So I know we're short on time, so Sarah, I guess I'll turn it back over to you. Hopefully that gives everybody an insight into our Power Broker Auditor line.
Perfect. Yeah, that was a great introduction. And so with that, I'm going to launch this poll, and then Paula rejoined. So we're going to have her finish up this webinar. We have 10 minutes left, just with some key things she wants you guys to take away from this section. But guys, if you want to see a little bit more of Power Broker in action, schedule a one-on-one demo with us. Select yes, please. We will be in contact with you and get you guys scheduled into the calendar to walk you through something that's a little more personalized and more specific to your needs. So select yes. And then Paula, let's go ahead and have you join right now. I'm so happy that you were able to come back. We're happy to have you back.
By the way, I had a blue screen, so that's why I get disconnected in the very last moment, just before you guys started to grab your stuff.
I can't believe it, but things happen. That's kind of the essence of live demoing and a live webinar. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and close down this screen, and I'm going to make Paula presenter. Mm-hmm. And Paul, if you want to go ahead and dive back in, I know we also did hit up we have some questions coming in from the audience, but why don't you go ahead and do, like a 5-minute wrap up and whatever other key points you wanted to make sure they took away from the session, and then we'll dive into a couple of questions before we end the webinar today.
Absolutely. Or what I was planning also to do is just to finish very quickly that demo that I was doing, so that the guys know basically how to audit a certain type of an OU, and then I will do the wrap up. I will definitely put it in 5 minutes.
Go for it. Great, go for it. Please show your screen and take it away.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks for staying. So right now you should see my screen with the remaining part of the demonstration. And just for the reminder, what we were doing, we are setting up over here an auditing of the OU. So I'm right now, I got like basically certain type of an OU, and then we've got a certain group that we choose over here. So it could be right now everyone. So we can choose from the advanced permissions, and over here within the access box, so within the permissions, we're able to specify, of course, what kind of items are allowed or disallowed for playing with a certain type of view. Yeah, so one of the things is that we can choose over here a bunch of access items. So changing the properties, deleting the subtree or anything like this. So we've got a list context, read all properties, but then what we need to have is the write all properties. And we're interested in the successful and failed, of course, monitoring. So here, don't forget, it's by default success. So you can choose all. So if someone will try to add someone to the OU, etc., then basically you will also see this information, though it's that particular way you are able to audit that. And then, of course, things like modify permissions, delete subtree, and modify owner, etc. So that's all extended rights, all validated rights, create all child objects. Yeah, so these are the access items over here that identify us all the different types of modifications on the level of an OU. Yeah, and then if we go into details, it's of course a lot. Yeah, so when you select those, there's lots of things that are selected at the same time on the right side. Yeah, so perfect. So when we get this, basically a certain OU or even a group, yes, then basically over here everyone, yeah, so we've got a sales OU here, then you are able to see that everyone particularly has this special permissions here. Yeah, so we've got check, select box for allow and deny, yeah, so they can do or they cannot do things, etc. Yeah, so deny, or you can just do allow, and effectively over here we're able to see if someone is auditing that on that level. Yeah, so it could be deny, but it could be also auditing, and then we can see that so everyone is denied. So I mean, if someone is, this is actually maybe not that's super logical, but effectively within the auditing area, if we do choose everyone, then we can select those, and then it means that we are able to audit if something changes for that particular OU. Yeah, and could be that, or could be the same on the group level. Yeah, so this is basically what at the end I wanted to show you. Yes, and if you want to do it, of course, on the group level, then basically you can get into that particular case within the ADSI edit. Yes, so you can specify within the default naming context. So it's a very similar operation, but within the ADSI. Yep, and within the, let me just get there, you've got a default naming context. And basically, while we're here, then we can specify, of course, a certain type of OUs, so certain type of objects, and then basically we can get into the properties of the domain and specify if there is like a new object appearing somewhere. So you can do it also from that level. Let me just do it very quickly. Here we go. Oh, once again. Yeah, properties, we got this. And we've got a security. Perfect. We can get to advanced. And I do have already everyone as well, so we can pull this out, and then we can get auditing, and we've got the same type of a principle, which is in everyone over here. So I got actually that one added to show you that very quickly. So there's the success everyone, and then basically we can get to edit, and then this is basically success or eventually and fail. And then you can see that we are able to list pretty much the same type of things. And that means that at the end, from the event logs, if you would like to set up that particular monitoring, because I mean, one thing is you can audit, but the second, you will need to have a policy on the top of that. So we could actually get into the policy. So I think we could go into GP MC very quickly, and I'm almost done with this. And within the group policy, we can just edit maybe for now on a default domain policy. Okay, edit.
And then we can get into policies, and then we can get into Windows settings and security settings. Here we go. We got our security settings. And then we've got basically our monitoring over here. And within the advanced audit policy configuration, here we go, you can specify what kind of audits you could have over here. Yeah, so we've got eventually privilege use. So if you do have a backup read, backup write that we were talking about, then basically this is one of the ways how you could learn that there is something actually going on within this backup privilege. Or so you got over here the sensitive privilege use, or eventually you can specify the detailed tracking, so what processes started and so on. And this is of course a system change objects, but that's more for system use. But what we are describing and what we've been describing over here, it's the object access. So we've got here a certain type of a file system audit, etc., and eventually access to the file share, detailed file share, etc. So these are the object access, the only ones really that are out there within the window. So it's not much, and as you see, it can be also extended, and that's basically a little bit of my summary over here. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Paula. Okay, just a rapid fire for Q&A right now. So Paula, are there any other privileges that overwrite permissions?
So the ones that we give over here, it's the backup read, backup write, so these two, and also you've got the token or privilege related permissions that are allowing you to be someone else, so the changing the token, etc. But these are the deeper ones. But these two that we mentioned, and also playing with the bypass traverse checking, these are the ones that are really affecting permissions here.
Hey, Bill, Matt's asking, I'm assuming the Exchange auditing would not work with Exchange Online Office 365 since we can't install an agent. Is that correct?
Presently, right now, we do not have an agent for that, but we are working on one. There is a roadmap item for that.
And Bill, can PowerBroker be integrated with the SIM, and to what extent?
So we can send event data from the PowerBroker Auditor application. As you collect data there, we can go ahead and determine what you would like to go ahead and send out to the SIM. So we can send that out via XML or text.
Okay, guys. Sorry, I can't get to all the questions. We've got to wrap this up. It's been an eventful 90 minutes, and I appreciate everybody sticking around and hanging out with us, listening in, asking questions. We really appreciate it. Just a reminder that a follow-up email containing the links to the recording and the slides shown here today will be emailed to you within 1 to 2 business days from now. So check that out. Make sure you have communications@beyondtrust.com whitelisted within your email client so you receive the follow-up without any interruption. And a big thanks to Paula and Bill today, and to everybody who attended live. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you at our next webinar. Take care, everybody, and goodbye.